Well, welcome back, guys. It's great to be here, and we've got another very exciting interview for you. It's one, again, that I'm really looking forward to because here we're going to be spending a bit more time talking about and thinking about what do we as mentors get from our mentoring, and um, how do we grow as a result? So it's a very exciting interview, I have to say. So it's with genuine pleasure that I would like to introduce you to Kirsten Rees.
Hi there, how are you this morning, Richard?
Good morning. Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Lovely to speak to you as well.
Absolutely. Do you want to just introduce yourself and tell everyone a bit about what you do?
Sure. My name's Kirsten. I'm actually up in Scotland just now, so it's not raining for once, which is always nice. And I run my own business, and where I do mentoring, volunteering as well. And I'm also an amateur novelist, so lots of words, talking and writing basically is what I do. My company is Make Me Success. It's hot copy and couture coaching. So I write content for businesses. So like the mentoring school, if they wanted to rebrand or completely retarget their market, I would come in and I would help them revamp all their content, or if they wanted some coaching on how to do that themselves, then I would come in and sit down with them and essentially go through the process of writing their own content and coaching them in business and how to get publicity and things like that as well. So it's really interesting. I get to work with some really cool, passionate people, which is always way more interesting than just sort of sitting in an office and sort of ticking some boxes when you get to work with people, which is where mentoring comes into it as well, because again, that's working with people on a one-to-one basis, which I absolutely have loved over the last couple of years. So it sort of came into it. I come back from working abroad, couldn't get a job. I decided to set up my own company. And while I was doing that, because you can't do that in a day, I had all this free time in my hands, and I had seen this charity in Glasgow called Move On. They were looking for teen mentors. I'd done volunteer work before. I'd been in an orphanage in Romania. I've done loads of charity fundraising. I've climbed mountains and done Tough Mudder and things like that. But this seemed a little bit more personal and just like really helping someone and seeing the end result rather than just handing over fundraising money and never seeing what happens with it. So I went along, and it was 8 weeks of training on a Saturday morning, which you're like, oh, this is a big commitment, and every weekend. So, and it's a full day, but it was one of the most life-changing and humbling experiences I've ever done. And yeah, you get all that good stuff. You get all the stuff, you feel good about yourself, and people are lovely to you. People tell you, oh, you're such a nice person. It's great that you're doing all these good things. But I can honestly say it was life-changing for me as much as it was for the boy that I worked with as well. Even the training course that I went through, I met a woman who's now become one of my best friends. I learned so much about the people in the group. The training was fantastic. The trainers were amazing. We're still in contact years later. And we've become like this little community where we still meet up and we still do things together. And we help each other with the mentoring. So if I've got something that I'm not sure about or I need help with, there's so much support there, and it's wonderful. But you really feel like you become part of this family. And I'm sure all mentors can say this about themselves, but when you're going through the training process and when you're mentoring and you're helping someone, you learn things about yourself. I definitely felt as if I came out a stronger person, more open with communication, able to talk about things myself. If I was having a hard time, I felt more comfortable going and speaking to other people about it than I ever did before in the past. It's been a wonderful experience. Like, I can wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I feel so honoured. I have to say, because of how it. So tell us, what does mentoring mean to you?
Initially, I thought it was just one of those things where you would go along and you would do a little bit of good and you'd feel good about yourself. That was the impression I got from what people did volunteer work for. But it's so much more than that. I don't want to say it takes over your whole life, because that sounds like a negative thing, but it influences your whole life and it impacts your whole life in a really positive way. And yeah, I'm not going to deny there were hard days. I was working with a boy who had Asperger's, and he was on the spectrum. And there were days that I struggled. There were days that I came home and I felt frustrated, and I wasn't sure how to change, not change his behaviour, but influence his behaviour in a positive way. And there were days like that. We worked together. I did over 200 hours of volunteer work in the past 18 months, mostly with him. But the training you can fall back on. They were also doing additional training. We did things like autism awareness, suicide awareness, and all sorts of things. And there's tough issues. I mean, some of the kids, there was other people in my training course who were working with kids who had come from background with alcoholism, drug abuse, other kinds of abuse, who maybe been through the care system. There might be issues. They do try and generally pair you with someone that you may have had some sort of background. If you've been through the care system, they might try and pair you with someone that's been in the care system. That can't always happen though. And at the end of the day, you're there to help them to the best of your capabilities. But we're not miracle workers. We just want to be a positive impact, and that's all that you can be at the end of the day. But it was incredible. You come home every day and you feel as if you've at least done something a little bit better, taking them in the right direction, which is all you can be asked of and all you can ask yourself.
It's so true. It's so true, and that it's about as you say, you can't actually get your mentees to do something. It's about showing them their options. It's about giving them that choice.
Yeah.
And actually, and that's part and parcel of what we talk about on the training. You don't own, you can't own that problem as a mentor. You're there because you walk the walk. You're there to share your experience, but it's down to your mentee to actually, to be able to
Absolutely.
start.
Yeah, I had an idea in my head that we were going to be able to do this X, Y, and Z, and we started working together before the summer. He was leaving school and attending college, and I'm thinking, okay, by the time he's reached college, we'll have done this, and this. He'll be able to do these tasks. And by the time we got to the end of the summer and the colleges started, in my eyes, we'd made very little progression. But when I went in to speak to the charity, and they said, no, for him, he's made huge progression. For you, it might not be as much. So your timelines might be different, and you might need to sort of put yourself in their shoes and realize that the tiniest little differences to them are huge. That they're these massive steps. Whereas if you don't have any of these conditions, or you haven't had that background, you might be capable of doing different things, but their capabilities are different, and that's all it is. It's not less, it's not more, it's just different. And you kind of just have to be able to walk in their shoes and appreciate the little changes, which I think is a huge thing in your own life. Because if you're having a tough day, or you haven't achieved something that you've been struggling with, or you're desperate to do something huge, you can just step back for a moment and appreciate those little moments and those little things, and give yourself a pat on the back for something that you maybe wouldn't ever have done before because it was something small. But I think it's definitely a new perspective for me, and I'm sure for other mentors as well. So that's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Now, is there a particular mentor that's influenced you?
I've had so many, to be honest, through my life. There's been obviously members of my family and my friends. I would say the women that I met through the mentoring training, who became a mentor as well, I went to her so often with things, and she came to me, and we've become such good friends. And although she finished up her mentoring, and I've just finished up mine with the boy and the girl that we were working with, respectively, we're planning to do it again in the future. And I think I'd say she's been the most impactful on a personal basis. But I have lots of business mentors. Natalie McNeil is a wonderful business mentor, but she also really focuses on self-care and looking after yourself and doing things like mindfulness, which, when you're having a stressful day, just being able to sit down and focus on yourself for 5 minutes and do a little bit of self-care. And I would say the same to the boy that I was working with as well. Don't be afraid to take 5 minutes out of your day and just sit down, focus on yourself, focus on your own needs, and block out the world and the stresses, because your mind is so important. It's just like any other muscle in your body, and it needs looking after as well. So business mentors and other mentors are a fantastic resource, definitely to take influence from. So definitely worth following some people that you respect.
And I think you've made a really important point there, and something that actually hasn't actually cropped up too much, but it's important as a mentor to be able to look after yourself.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
and one of the things that again, there's cropped up in a couple of conversations is about the, I was going to say reflective practice, and
Yeah.
actually reflecting as you're going through a mentoring session on how you're feeling, about what's going on, what you're suggesting, and actually how it's being received and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Because actually, ultimately, as you said earlier, you're not there to solve the mentee's problems. You're there
No. No, and oftentimes you can't solve them. You know, if they have a condition or it's something that's ingrained into them, it's, you know, it's years and years. And they said to me at the charity, you're not a therapist. You're not there to solve the problems for them. You're not there to help them solve them. You know, you're there to help them take steps on a journey towards a better result, towards a better life, with the support of the mentoring, and with the support of the charity, and with the support of everyone else in their life, their parents, their peers, and everyone else. You're a piece in a jigsaw, I think, is kind of how I would describe it, that helps them end up with a full picture at the end of the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, so your business, you offer Hote Coffee and Couture.
Yeah.
Now, please tell us about that, and tell us what got you into that.
I've always scribbled stories. In fact, my school reports always used to say, needs to get out of her own head. She's always, you know, thinking about stories and staring out the window and not focusing on her maths. So I was always a little bit of a sort of writer and scribbler. And when I was away traveling, I was in Hong Kong and South Africa, I would sit with my iPad and I would tap out different things. And when I came home, as I said earlier, I couldn't find a job that I wanted to do. It was all sales, which is what I'd done before. My background was sales and marketing, and I was good at it. I was really good at it, and I had a great job before. I had lots of benefits. It was all really interesting, but I absolutely hated the job, and it made me completely miserable. And all the money in the world doesn't make you happy if you hate what you're doing 8-10 hours a day. So I decided to sort of continue my sabbatical at home and take some extra time. And I started looking at things, and I'd always loved the idea of being an author, but didn't think that happened to normal people. I thought it was, you know, these incredible people that had wonderful stories and fantastic, interesting lives. So I had started sort of writing a book just for myself, and then I was Googling writing jobs, and I came across copywriting, which I'd never heard of before in my life. And I had realized that I had been doing it. I'd been helping people with their CVs. I'd helped a couple of people with their LinkedIn profiles. I'd written, you know, I'd had little jobs here and there over the summer where I'd been helping people because I was really good at spelling and I'm great at grammar, and you know, I know how to string a sentence together, and I've got a good imagination. So I ended up with this sort of copywriting job before I realized what a copywriter was, and then that developed into people wanting to meet up with me for coffee to chat about their content, and it becoming a sort of nurturing coaching session. And they're like, you need to start charging for this. You know, you're sitting here for an hour with me and you're giving me all this great advice, and I'm doing really well and I love that, but you need to start. So that's how the coaching side of the business ended up. So I do a wine and wine session, which is where we go into the city, we have a glass of wine, they whine about all their business troubles, and we find a solution. We troubleshoot it over a glass of wine or a cup of coffee or tea, of course, because not everybody drinks. But I just wanted to be more. I'm always very hugs, not handshakes. I've always been, you know, if they're okay with a hug, then we have a hug, rather than sort of stuffy sitting down, you know, handshake, very business-like and very corporate-like. And I've left all that corporate, you know, life behind, and I'm more about let's sit down, let's troubleshoot your problems, let's enjoy your business, because you know what's the point otherwise? If you're not enjoying it, if you're not smiling at the end of the day, then you know, it's just going to make you miserable. So definitely find something that you want to do, and if you've got some free time, give back in some way. It doesn't need to be, volunteering like every week like I did. I was 3-4 hours sometimes a week, but I had the time to do it. I had the time that I could afford to do that. So there are so many different ways to help mentor people, whether it's someone in your life or whether it's through your program at mentoring school or some other way. So but it means the world to someone else, and it can end up meaning so much to you as well. So
Definitely, that makes it. And are there any particular success stories that kind of stick out to you?
From the mentoring, the boy I worked with was wonderful. He's now in his second year at college. He is. They told me that he wanted to order a pizza, and instead of coming down and asking his dad to do it, he phoned and then came downstairs and said, "Dad, I've ordered a pizza. When he arrives, can you pay for him?" Now, a year ago, he wouldn't pick up the phone. He wouldn't have a conversation over the phone with a stranger. He went into college himself in his second year. And sat down and started engaging with people, whereas a year before he had to be taken in, he had to picked up and dropped off at the train station or run into the city. And now he's getting trains himself, buses himself. He's so much more confident, and he's got a more fulfilling life. And that's not just credit to me, that's the charity that we worked with and his parents and everything. But our one-to-one time grew his confidence like the stratosphere. So I'm very, very proud of him for that. And myself personally, my most recent client was a book. I've written my books myself. I've got one published. I'm working on just now my trilogy. It's with Forever Gone. It's with a New York publishing agent just now. It's sitting there being read, so fingers crossed that'll be out next year. But the last client I worked with, she needed an editor for her book, and she ended up writing an acknowledgement, a lovely acknowledgement for me in the opening pages of her book. So that's like forever in there, and it was a lovely compliment. So I really enjoyed working with her for a couple of months, and we got her book from something that was good to great to something she's so proud of, and I'm so proud of her as well. She's doing really well with it. So that's been a sort of new forte for me, helping edit someone's book and bringing that into fruition. So that was an incredible experience. I not only consider that a success for her, but it's something that's now a new feather in my cap that I hadn't done before. So I'm considering putting that into my business as well. But I think the hot copy and couture coaching is long enough without adding, and book editing in as well. So we might just need to mention that on the website.
Absolutely. So how have all of these experiences influenced your life?
In so many ways. I could write your list, and it would go on for days. I would say that the deepest for me is my family recently lost someone very close to us, and bereavement is incredibly hard for anyone, even the strongest people. And dealing with that is a lot easier not easier, but it's difficult to say, but easier when you've got the skills and the tools to deal with it. And having those skills is not something that you're taught. It's not innate. You some people can deal with it and some people can't, but they don't always deal with it in the right way. And grief is a terrible thing. So having gone through that process in our training class, so we all had to open up, we had to tell our stories, we had to converse with each other about what we've gone through in our lives. And that process enables you, when you become a mentor, to engage with the person, the mentee or the teenager or an adult, whoever you're mentoring, in a more open way and be more communicative, because you can't expect them to open up to you if you're not willing to be an open person, if you're not willing to, and it's not that they sit and ask you about your life, it's just the process of sitting there and being comfortable listening to someone else's story and being okay with maybe telling them a few things as well about your life, and that helped so much with going through this recently, that I was able to sit down and talk to friends and family about it and be a little bit more open rather than sort of keeping it all inside. And that's never a good thing, to sort of bury feelings like that. So that's definitely the most intense thing. But even on the tiniest scale, there's been so many little moments where even I've found confidence. I've always considered myself an introvert. I've done things that have been extrovert. I've stood up on stages and I've talked to hundreds of people. But there are things that I've kind of forced myself to do, and I've because it's been my job or through my business, I've certainly never been comfortable doing them. And now, it's a totally different story. So I'm much, I'm never going to be the bravest going up there and being completely confident, but I'm certainly a lot more confident doing things like that. So mentoring is mentoring training, a mentoring process, working with that boy and seeing life through someone else's eyes is an incredibly humbling thing, but it also makes you appreciate your own skills, the things that you have learned, the things that come naturally to you, and just sort of stopping every now and then to smell the roses, and sort of give yourself a pat on the back, because we never do that, especially British people. We never give ourselves a pat on the back, and when someone else gives you a compliment, it's like, oh no, don't be silly, but now, I think going through something like that and seeing how hard life can be for other people, you start to think, well, you know what, I deserve a pat on the back today. It's been a tough day and I got through it. So it makes you more appreciative and certainly more content with your own life, I think.
Yeah, and it's so true. And it's so true. So, in your experience with mentoring, are there any common themes that you've seen coming out through your sessions?
I think with me personally, the boy that I worked with, he had a lot of full confidence. A lot of the things were put on. He certainly wasn't confident, and he would sort of tell little fibs sometimes that I knew weren't true. And it's just, you have to get to a point where they're comfortable with you to tell the truth and to be honest and to be themselves. And whether it's actually a spoken, not a lie, a spoken white truth or a spoken fib, or whether it's something that they're putting on, a behavior. People aren't always themselves when they first meet you. And it's just, I think, breaking down barriers. And when I was talking to my friend and some of the other mentors, breaking down barriers seems to be the hardest and the biggest sort of hurdle to get over in the first place, to a place where you're both being yourself, you're both comfortable sitting down and chatting and just being relaxed and going for a coffee or whatever it is you're doing during your session, and just being eventually okay to take a step back and let them do more. In the beginning, you're maybe doing everything for them. You're buying the tickets for the activity. You're deciding where to go. You're trying to encourage them. But eventually, it's taking a step back, just as a parent would. Eventually, and letting them, go off and do things themselves, and being okay with standing back and letting them fall down. Letting them not literally, but letting them fall down and make their own mistakes and learn from them, and then sitting with them afterwards and saying, okay, where do you think that didn't quite go right? Because there's no such thing as going wrong. We all make mistakes, but we learn from them, we pick ourselves back up. But where did you think it didn't quite go right? And next time, if that happens, what do you think you do instead? And just having that conversation. But barriers are physical barriers, emotional barriers, mental barriers. That's definitely the most common theme, and it's
Absolutely.
gradually taking a brick at a time rather than trying to hammer them down.
And that's absolutely fundamental to mentoring. The difference between mentoring and coaching, what you're describing.
Yeah.
You are absolutely, the textbook and the theory on this, because actually, mentoring is all about dealing with the barriers. You walk the walk. You're dealing with the barriers, the blocks that mentee has got at that moment in time. So it's present time. Whereas actually, when you move over to coaching and more coaching model, then that's about preparing them for what they're going to be doing in the future. Saying, absolutely, when you encounter this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to find. However, they're going to walk that journey themselves. Just, so you coach for an exam, for example, whereas actually if you're doing a project, you probably mentor them for it. Yeah. It's all about whether it's now or in the future.
Yep. So many transferable skills. See, I didn't even know that.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're coming to the end of our time together. So I just want to ask you, what do you think that the future of mentoring is?
Oh, 100%. They need to build it. I think it should be built into schools from primary level. I think it should be built up. My little nephew's just started school, and he has a little boy who's a couple of years older than him, it's not mentoring, it's not official. He just sort of takes him under his wing for the first couple of weeks. But I think that can be grown into something so much more fundamental through our education process, that everyone has mentoring, whether it's emotional or support, or whether it's, you know, to make sure that your mental health is healthy. We've got mental health, you know, awareness coming up soon, and just support, because we're not encouraged enough to talk about our troubles in life. And you know, sometimes you could be going through the hardest thing in the world, and it's just, oh, keep smiling, and it's very difficult. And I think we'd all be happier and more content, and have easier lives if we all just helped mentor one another. You know, and it's not necessarily an older person looking after a younger person. It can be completely the other way around. But I definitely think it needs to be more ingrained into our society, and become part of everyday life, that we all have mentors and we all are mentees at different stages in our life. But that would be an incredible and a wonderful thing for all of us, I think. But for now, you know, like the mentoring school, we definitely need more guidance, more support, and more awareness of these programs.
Super. Thank you very much. Kirsten, it's been an absolute pleasure. And we're going to have to end it there, but thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and thank you very much too.
Cheers then.
Take care. Bye.